Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Renovo webinar on effective job search techniques and accessing the hidden job market. My name is Colin Brown. I'm the Chief Executive of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, and we're delighted to be working with Renovo to bring this webinar to you today, which I know ahead of time is going to be of value to you and those of you who are in a job search situation at the moment. And then I'm particularly interested in the final section on the hidden job market. I'm a chartered engineer, and most of my working life has been in engineering organizations, either as a practicing engineer or as a manager of engineers. And looking forward to this webinar, I look back at my own career, and I've had 7 employers in my lifetime, and I was surprised to realize in retrospect that only one of them had actually put out an advertisement for a role. The other 6 were all what we would call the hidden job market. So I particularly feel, of course, the Institution of Mechanical Engineers has got a value to add in that networking activity, and I look forward to hearing your questions on that and seeing how the discussion goes. I will now, however, hand over to Jill Dwyer, my colleague, who is going to be the Master of Ceremonies today and take you through the webinar and the questioning afterwards. Jill, over to you.
Thank you very much, Colin. I'm one of the business development managers at the IMechE. My particular role is to support members of the armed forces and the wider MOD with professional registration and the support from the institution. Now, I'd like to introduce Louise O'Brien, who is our speaker today. Louise is Head of Career Coaching at Renovo. She takes a lead role in their career coaching team. Louise is personally recognised by the Career Development Institute and has been awarded Career Coach of the Year. She has a strong track record of delivering outplacement support to individuals from a range of backgrounds and industries. And Louise has been supporting individuals over the last 10 years, including through the IMechE and the support network. And with this experience, she provides guidance and direction to the entire Renovo coaching team. So before I hand over to Louise to start this session, I'd just like to encourage you as we go through the session to ask a question, and you'll find there's an area where you can put your question in at any point. Louise won't have time to do that until the end, but there will be chance at the end, and we'll get through as many questions as we can. And finally, before I hand over, I'd just like to say, if anybody is interested in having a copy of the slides from today, please email over to eventinquiries@imeche.org and we'll get those over to you. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Louise for today's session.
Thank you, Jill, and also thank you, Colin, for your introduction as well. So my name's Louise. As Jill pointed out, I'm Head of Career Coaching at Renovo, and over the next 40 minutes, I'm going to be talking to you about effective job search techniques and also accessing the hidden job market. So there's 4 main ways that you can actually search for your next career move, including online job searching, working with recruiters, networking and speculative approaches. So today I'm going to be sharing some useful hints and tips when you're seeking your next career move. So we're going to be looking at how you can plan an online search, identify the right job boards and make successful online applications. I'll also be talking to you about recruiters so you can understand how they operate and gain some insight into working with them for both temporary and permanent opportunities. And 70% of jobs aren't advertised. So I'm going to be providing you with high impact advice on networking and how you can make successful speculative applications. Now, the advice and guidance that I'm going to be providing you with today is based on the UK job market, and I am aware that we have got global members attending the session today. However, most of these techniques will be relevant across global locations, and I am aware that we will have people who have been employed long term and also people who have moved across the job market throughout their career. So there may be some areas that you're more familiar with than others. So I've tried to cover from all angles to ensure that I'm providing advice and guidance from anybody who has never had to look for work before, right through to people who are very well averse to job searching throughout their career. So do bear with me. Okay, so the first part of the webinar, we're going to be talking about online job searching. So I'll be talking to you about how you can plan your job search, find the most useful websites that you can then utilise as part of your job search. Now, planning is absolutely key. So before you start job searching, you need to identify what types of jobs that you're looking for and gain clarity about the jobs that you're going to be targeting. So you want to think about the job titles, the functions and the sectors that they sit in, because this will have a direct impact, not just on the sites that you use, but also how you conduct your search on each job board. So ask yourself, what type of skills and responsibilities are you looking for in your next career move? Are you clear on what that next role needs to look like for you? Are you looking for something very similar to your most recent role? Or are you at a point in your career where maybe you're wanting to take a step back? So it's really important that you conduct some self-analysis. What skills do you enjoy using? What would you consider to be your main strengths? What tasks would you like to feature in your next role? And what other aspects of your career are important to you? Is it salary? Is it location? Is it the sector that you want to continue working in? Now, you need to identify job boards that are going to be most relevant for you. And the internet is filled with thousands of job boards, and they all cover different functions and sectors. And most of these job boards allow you to upload your CV. Now, if you haven't done that before, with the job boards where you can upload your CV, that will allow hiring managers and recruiters to search for candidates. Often before they post the vacancy, they actually look at who saved their CV to these databases. Now, it's estimated that 60% of employers are actually using applicant tracking systems. And if you watched the webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago on CVs, I talked to you about applicant tracking systems. An applicant tracking system is a piece of software that recruiting and hiring managers use. These systems collect and sort thousands of CVs based on keywords and shortlist them based on that criteria. So when you are applying for a job, it is essential that you look at your CV and you look at the keywords that are in the job description to make sure that they come through on your CV. So your CV is shortlisted by the recruiter or the hiring manager. Now, some applicant tracking systems will reject CVs that are in PDF if they've got any imagery on the CV, or if you've got any text boxes on your CV as well. So you want to make sure that your CV, when you're using it on a job board, is no longer than 3 pages and it's in Word. Now, it is essential that you're organised when you are making your application. So I would encourage you to set yourself up with a spreadsheet or keep a diary of your applications. So as and when you're targeting employers or recruiters and you're having those follow-up phone calls, you're showing that you're in clear control of your job search. And then that way you've got a function there you can actually follow up each application, especially if a recruiter is talking to you about other vacancies as well. So as I mentioned, there are lots of different job boards that you can start looking through. So first of all, you've got job board aggregators, and I've listed a couple on here. If you're not familiar with the term job board aggregator, it's a bit like Compare the Market. It's a site comparison website, and an aggregator compares thousands of job boards and brings up the most recently posted jobs. So if you're at the very early stages of your job search and you're not too sure what job boards are going to be available for you and most suitable, start by having a look at job boards such as indeed.co.uk or engineeringjobs.co.uk, because what this actually does is it searches all of the different job boards and recruiter sites and picks up the most recently posted jobs based on your criteria, and then it lists those for you. And then when you click on that job board, what it will actually then do is redirect you to the site where the job's actually being advertised. So you'll hear me refer to job board. A job board is also known as a job site as well. Okay, so there are hundreds of different job boards that you can have a look at. You've also then got what we would call sector and function-specific job boards. So, for example, if you were looking for jobs in renewables, you'll find that you can actually find sector-specific job boards, and you can just Google jobs in renewables or jobs in oil and gas, and that will then bring up sector-specific job boards. So the job board aggregators will search all sectors and all industries and all jobs. But then if you've got a specific sector in mind, it's useful to use Google just to look at what are the job boards that are relevant for my specific sector. So again, if it's jobs in automotive, jobs in renewables, Google that to find the sector-specific job board. Also think about the job title, because with some of these job boards as well, it depends on the actual function of the role as well. So again, use Google and find some function-specific job boards. So again, you might have mechanical engineer jobs or project engineer jobs. So use Google, and then what that will then do is it will bring up not just the industry, but the function-specific job boards as well. So that's an introduction to actually just starting to familiarise yourself with what job boards are out there. As and when you start familiarising yourself with these different job boards, make a note of the job boards that are advertising the jobs that are most relevant for you, because those are the jobs that you want to regularly check, and those are also the job boards where you want to save your searches. You want to upload your CV to that job board as well. So one of the things that you also want to think about are any industry-related trade magazines, because they often have job boards that you can look at as well. Think about the companies who you want to work for, because again, they're likely to have a careers page where you can upload your CV. So as and when they're in the process of recruiting, they will actually look at the CVs that have been uploaded to their careers page. Also, you can search for jobs on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is becoming the world's biggest platform for jobs. 87% of recruiters will advertise jobs on LinkedIn and nowhere else. So if you're applying for jobs on LinkedIn, you want to make sure you've got an up-to-date LinkedIn profile, because this acts like an online CV. And then I would encourage you to follow companies of interest on LinkedIn so you can hear about those vacancies as and when they post them, because they will be posting them through LinkedIn as well. Now, there isn't a top list of the best websites for you to search. As I said, most job boards will have different functions that are going to be most relevant for you. So as and when you start using these job boards, start with the job board aggregators, make a note of the job boards that are coming up with the most relevant jobs for you. And those are the ones that you want to go back, save your searches, upload your CV to them as well. Now, if you do upload your CV to any of these job boards, what will happen is that a recruiter, when they're searching for a candidate, they will look at the CVs most recently posted. So I would suggest that every couple of days or so, any of the job boards where your CV is uploaded, click into your CV on that job board and come out of it again, and it will automatically repost your CV. So then if somebody is searching for CVs most recently posted, your CV will rank higher than if you just leave it on there for a couple of weeks. So when you are job searching, you need to really think carefully about the keywords that are most relevant for the types of jobs that you're looking for, because some companies will use different job titles. So you not only want to job search using job titles, but also think about keywords or technical skills or industry names that are relevant to what you're looking for moving forward. And this is what we call Boolean keyword searches. So as Jill said earlier, if you do want a copy of the slide so you can access what these different Boolean keyword search terms are, you will need to email that email address that she mentioned earlier on, so you can have access to this slide. But the Boolean keyword searches, these are great because it just means that you can actually create more of an advanced job search. So with some job boards, when you conduct a search, it will automatically search for similar keywords. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to make sure that you search for keywords that are going to be most relevant for you. So for example, if we were to take the word and, that means that will actually search for any of those terms that include those keywords in there. So and we could have mechanical design engineer and you could put in there automotive or and renewables. So not only is it going to search for mechanical design engineer, but it will also include and renewables. You can also have at least one word or phrase that must be in the job title or description. So again, you could have 3D, CAD, or SolidWorks. So again, you can just make sure that you use the term or. So when you're doing an advanced job search, you can actually put some of these keywords in here. Also, if you're looking for, let's say, for example, a design engineer, but it's not in a particular sector, so you're applying for jobs and you find lots of design engineer roles are coming up in aerospace, but that isn't an industry that you want to target. So you could put in design engineer, not, and then the sector that you don't want to look at. So again, it's just going to make sure that it only looks for design engineers, but not in aerospace. You can search for a whole phrase where you can use speech marks in there. So again, if you want to make sure that it includes mechanical design engineer, not just design engineer, you can put in speech marks mechanical design engineer. So that's quite useful if it's a specific job title. So project engineer in speech marks. You can use brackets as well to define the order in which you want to search as well. So again, you want to make sure that if you're looking at project management roles, you might put in brackets project manager, but also in brackets Prince 2. So you can categorize in what order is most important for you. Okay, and the final one is the star. So at least one of the words in the job title must contain what we call the STEM word. So in this case, we've used the word design. So it could be that you are looking at a title which must contain the word design, and that could include designer or designs or designing, but it's got the STEM word in, which is design. Okay, and that's by using the star on there. Now, most job boards will advertise vacancies by hiring managers and recruitment agencies. And if you're applying for a role via a recruitment agency, it's really important that you know how recruiters work so you can actually maximise those interactions. So the next part of our webinar is going to start talking about how you can work with recruitment agencies and headhunters. Okay, so there are a number of ways that you can secure your next career move. So I've mentioned job searching online so far. Another way is to actually make use of a recruitment consultant and a headhunter. Now, again, I'm aware that some people may not have used recruiters before, so I'm going to go through how they work because they can make a huge difference to your job search. So whether you're applying for a job advertised by a recruiter, or maybe you wanted to make contact with a specialist recruiter for the first time, it's really important that you understand what they look for and how they can help you. So for this part of the webinar, we'll have a look at what is a recruitment consultant, what do they do, what are the types of recruitment consultancy so you can find the right recruiter for you, and I'll also introduce you to the pre-screen process that recruiters are actually using as well. Okay, so before we start talking about the different types of recruitment agencies, I thought it'd be quite useful just to talk to you about the role of a recruitment agency, just so you know how they work to manage your expectations. So recruitment consultants and headhunters work closely with an employer or a company to get an understanding of the organisation and their recruitment needs. They will then proactively and reactively look for candidates to fill temporary or permanent positions that they're recruiting for. Before they advertise the vacancy, it's quite likely they'll look for candidates either registered with them or who's currently seeking their next career move. They will then try to attract suitable candidates through advertising, referrals, headhunting and other media. Now, the recruitment consultant will have to screen candidates and interview them before submitting a shortlist to their clients. And generally, a shortlist consists of about 5 to 10 CVs. Now, it's likely that your CV won't be rewritten by a recruitment consultant. They'll just copy and paste it into their format. So it's really important, as I mentioned earlier, that you tailor your CV for each role that you're applying for, because your CV won't be rewritten by a recruitment consultant. So also send it to them in a Word document so they can quite easily convert it into a PDF, which they will then use. They'll then manage the application process right from the pre-screen through to the interview stage, and they'll also handle the negotiations and rejections. So ultimately, the role of a recruiter or a headhunter, excuse me, is to shortlist and fill vacancies for an employer, which will save that company time and money. Now, it's really important that you're aware of recruitment agency fees. So you as a candidate, as a job seeker, you don't have to pay to use an agency, they're free of charge. But for a company to make full use of a recruitment consultant for a permanent role, the company that is using the recruitment agency, they will pay a percentage of the annual salary that you would be starting on, or a flat fee. And this could be anywhere between 8 to 20% of your salary. So if you're going in on a salary of £50,000, let's say, the minimum that a recruiter would charge for a company to hire you would be a minimum of around £5,000. So it can be really expensive to work with a recruitment agency. The more senior you are, the higher the salary, the higher the fee. So if you are in a position right now where you're having to look at alternative sectors, I'm going to be talking to you about accessing the hidden job market, because if you're getting rejected by recruiters at the moment because you've not worked in that industry or sector before, the fees are really playing quite a huge part in that. For temporary roles, the consultancy charges the company an hourly or daily rate plus a margin. After 13 weeks of contracting, you can then be transferred onto their payroll without an additional charge to the organisation. So as I said, you'll be paid an hourly or a daily rate, and there'll be a profit margin where there'll be extras taken into account from that the company will then be charged. Now, the fees are paid in addition to your salary. It doesn't come out of your salary. And obviously, it's in the recruiter's best interest to get you the highest possible salary, because, again, this means that they get a larger fee. But the recruitment consultancy is paid by the company. You should never pay for this service. There are thousands of recruitment consultants that are out there, so it's essential that you know who those agencies are to make sure that you choose the right ones for them. And as I said, if you're looking to change industry or sector, or maybe you're looking to return back into an industry that you've not been working in most recently, the salary and the fees are really holding this weighting here on why recruiters are only representing people with recent experience. So I will talk to you about networking in the hidden job market, where you can really capitalise on that when you're looking at alternative industries. So how to find the right recruiter for you? Lots of different ways. I mentioned Google. Google's the best way to find any of the best job boards, but also the best recruitment agencies. So use Google recruitment agencies. So you could Google renewable recruitment consultants. You could Google automotive recruitment consultants. You could Google project engineer recruitment consultants. So use Google, and what that will do is it will look for recruiters based on your location, but also based on those keywords as well. Also think about the job boards that you're searching under as well. Look at the jobs that are being advertised right now. Whoever's advertising those, if it's a recruitment consultant, that's a recruiter that you want to start talking to and working with also. There's a really good website called agencycentral.co.uk and also allheadhunters.co.uk. And what you will find is that with these two websites, you'll be able to find recruiters and headhunters by sector, but also by location as well. So that's really important that you have a look at those. Okay. Also, LinkedIn is fantastic because you can actually look for recruitment consultants who are on LinkedIn. All you would need to do is, when you're on LinkedIn, is go into the search function at the top and type in recruitment consultants. So that will search LinkedIn for recruitment consultants on LinkedIn. But to narrow down that search, put in plus and the sector. So you could put recruitment consultant plus rail plus Newcastle. So that's going to search any recruitment consultants that are in the rail sector who are also recruiting and are based in and around Newcastle. So if you want to really understand which recruiters are the best ones for you, not only do you have these directories, but use LinkedIn as well. Now, any good recruiter and headhunter will actually proactively use LinkedIn to search for candidates as well. So it's really important that you have an up-to-date LinkedIn profile that's at an all-star status. They'll search for keywords, so similar to how you would search for a recruiter, they'll search into job titles and keywords. So it's really important that your LinkedIn profile is complete. Also, as and when you see recruiters on LinkedIn, connect with them on LinkedIn. If they're posting on LinkedIn, like their posts, comment on their posts. Immediately, that will increase your visibility on LinkedIn as well. I'd always recommend that you find recruiters through friends, contacts, former colleagues, clients that you've worked with, suppliers. You tend to find that headhunters and senior level recruiters rely heavily on recommendations. So it's really important that when you're thinking about talking to people that you know, ask them which recruiters have they worked with in the past. You're seeking that next career move. You'd like to get some recommendations just to start making connections with recruiters. And finally, the recruitment industry is largely unregulated. So to ensure that you're getting a quality service, make sure that the recruitment consultancy that you're using is a member of the REC, and that stands for the Recruitment and Employment Confederation. And you can go onto the REC website to get a full list of who those recruiters are. So just before I move on to the hidden job market, okay, let me just change slides. Okay, so before we move on to the hidden job market, one of the things that you want to be thinking about is that pre-screen process. So when you apply for a job through a recruitment consultant, or whether you're sending your CV to introduce yourself, it's very likely that they'll do a pre-screen process with you before they even submit your CV for a specific role, or before they start considering you for future opportunities as well. So speaking or virtually meeting your recruiter for the first time is treated very much like a first stage interview. You want to prepare for this meeting as you would do for the interview. And preempt the questions that recruiters are going to ask so you can start thinking about your responses before you have to deliver those. So a recruiter pre-screen, once you've applied for a job, or if you send your CV to them, these are the types of questions that you're going to be asked. Talk me through your career history. So they'll want you to talk through your CV, talking to them about why you've moved, talking about achievements, responsibilities held in different roles. So really understand your CV, think about your achievements and where you've added value. They also want to know about what your key areas of expertise are as well. So, what sets you apart from other people? What is your experience and what are you looking for in terms of a role? Even if you've applied for a specific role, they'll also be thinking about other opportunities that they can represent you for as well. So, what sectors are you looking at? What type of roles are you interested in? Are there particular companies that you're interested in? The size of those companies, the turnover of those companies? Is location important to you? What are your salary ranges that you're looking at the moment? They'll also want to know what your long-term career aspirations are as well. So they'll want to know, longer term, what is it that you are looking for? They'll also want to get a really good understanding of your background. So as I said, when they're talking through your CV, they'll want to know in more detail, the size of the projects that you've worked on, what phase of those projects that you're involved in, what kind of challenges that you've faced, and what are those setbacks, and what your career achievements are as well, and also your technical abilities also. So make sure you treat this meeting as a first stage interview because they'll be assessing you on your interview technique and checking that you're credible enough to put in front of their clients. So having a good discussion about your achievements and your background information will enable your recruiter to then use this information to differentiate you from other candidates as well. So this brings me into the final part of the webinar, and I'm sure this is the part that most people have been waiting for. And this is where we start looking at the hidden job market. So I've spoken to you about the online job searching and also how to start thinking about working with recruiters in response to a job online, or also starting to build relationships with recruiters so they can start looking for opportunities as well. But it's predicted that at the moment, about 70% of roles aren't actually being advertised. So it's really important that you're not just reliant on recruiters and online job boards, that you also adopt a proactive approach to access this hidden job market. And the reason why the hidden job market exists is because it costs time and money to advertise and shortlist for a position. And so many employers choose to do it alternatively if they know somebody through word of mouth, headhunting, or candidates that they've got on file. And Colin mentioned at the beginning of the webinar as well, based on his experience, he's known of companies that he's worked for who have actually hired this way as well, and they've not had to advertise. So we do know that it does exist. So there's two main ways that you can access the hidden job market. So first of all, there's through networking. And secondly, there's through a speculative approach. So I'm going to be talking to you about these two approaches. Now, before you even start networking and before you even start targeting companies proactively, you need to have an elevator pitch. Now, this is really where you start thinking about what is it that you're looking for and how are you going to go about locating it. So start thinking about, what are your requirements? What industries are you interested in? What size of company, the company culture? Because if you've got that clarity in mind, your approach is going to be a lot more targeted, and then you can actually really customize your elevator pitch for your target audience. So before you even start reaching out to any of these companies or anybody in your network, you want to create an elevator pitch. So if you're not familiar with that term, the term is quite American. Basically, as you enter an elevator, you've got 60 seconds to convince the people that you're in that elevator pitch of who you are, what your background is, before it reaches the floor 60 seconds later. So it's making sure that you can actually introduce yourself and tell people about your background or your areas of expertise and your career aspirations in a short space of time. So a good elevator pitch consists of 4 key areas: who you are, what you do, why you're unique, and what your goals are. Now, a good elevator pitch should be between about 80 to 150 words. It should be short enough to retain the attention of the audience, but with enough substance to make it compelling. Now, this can change depending on your target audience. So you might be using your elevator pitch with people that know you, and you may not adopt a really formal approach with it. You might just use it just to highlight some of your areas of expertise and what you're looking for moving forward. But for somebody who doesn't know you, you want to really think about what differentiates you from anybody else. Now, a pitch is a conversation starter. It's not a deal closer. It's an elevator pitch is to show what you have to offer to meet the needs of the listener. So your pitch must be relevant to the listener so you can customize it for various audience groups. So as I said, you might not use it in its full form. You might actually customize it depending on who you're talking to. And what we want to think about when you're thinking about your elevator pitch is, what are the pressure points of companies right now? What are their challenges? What solutions can you offer? You're not using this approach to say you're looking for your next career move. You need to think about, what are the biggest challenges that these companies are facing right now, and what solutions can you offer them where they're going to think about potentially creating opportunities for you based on that offering. So first of all, you can use it with your network. So now you've considered what you have to offer, opportunities are attached to people. So we want to start thinking about who is in your network and who can you start reaching out to. Now, the easiest way to do this is for you to make a list of people that you know and potentially lists of people that they know. Now, if we would start thinking about different groups that you could reach out to, friends and family members are probably going to be the people who are most willing to help you find a job and will openly provide leads to people that they know. So try and think about not just people that you know, think about people that they know. So it could be their husband or their wife, or it could be parents of other children that your child goes to the same school as or university, and start thinking about people that you know, because you never know who the people that they may know are going to be the most useful. So start by thinking about friends and family. Also think about work colleagues, recent, past colleagues. LinkedIn's great. It works like what I would always call an address book of people that you have professionally come into contact with. So think about work colleagues, past and present. Also think about professional contacts as well. Think about your accountant, a bank manager, a solicitor that you've used before. These are the types of people who have got a large number of clients. So again, see if they could recommend or put you in touch with anybody as well. Now, obviously, we've got restrictions in place at the moment, but there might be clubs that you were a member of or that you're still actually involved in. So think outside of work. People that you meet in your spare time, that could be, at the gym, it could be at a social club, it could be, at a religious event, anything where you're talking to people and you're gathering information, because it's really important to start thinking about the people that you're talking to. Now, as I said, LinkedIn's a great tool if you're thinking about looking at your network, and you've also got the groups function if you're looking to expand your network as well. So at this point, you've probably thought of lots of people and you can't make contact with everybody. So we want to start categorizing your network. We want to break them into 3 groups. Your first group are your top contacts, so anybody who has the power to arrange an interview or to physically offer you a job. So they're your hot contacts. The second group are those people that can refer to somebody, or refer you to somebody who can introduce you to a decision maker or somebody to actually offer you a job. So that's somebody who operates as an intermediary. The third group of contacts are people who can actually provide information about job vacancies, people who may be knowledgeable in your industry that can actually provide you with some tips and techniques. So we've got 3 key groups: the hot contacts who can offer you the job, who can actually arrange the interview; the second group, the warmer contacts who can put you in touch with those decision makers, and that third group are what we would call your cooler contacts who can actually just give you the advice and guidance that you're looking for. Now, you think about what you want to say beforehand, and you may not feel it's as appropriate with people that you know to do that full elevator pitch. You might just use your elevator pitch for the speculative approach. Now, not everybody likes to network, so let's change the term networking to meaningful chats. You're just having a conversation, a meaningful chat with somebody in your network. So rather than asking for a job, could you ask them for some advice and guidance? For example, I'm aware that last year you secured a new role with this company. Would you mind giving me some advice and guidance? What job boards did you find most useful? Are there any particular recruitment consultants that were useful in your job search? Do you mind me asking what the recruitment process was like for this company? Because this company is of an interest to me as well. Would you be happy to introduce me to somebody in the organisation that I could discuss this with further? So as I said, you don't necessarily have to ask for a job. Try and be creative. Think about why you want to talk to that individual and how you can ask for that advice and guidance, because everybody likes to be useful and to be helpful. You might also want to ask them, if they change sectors, what were the biggest challenges that they faced? Could they give you any advice and guidance in changing sectors and alternative industries as well? Now, if somebody is actually putting you in touch with somebody in their network, keep them involved in the process, update them, tell them what's going on, just in case they talk to their contact. And if you don't keep them updated in the process, this can have a really negative impact. So it's really important that if they are helping you, that you do keep them informed of your progress. So in addition to networking, we've also got speculative approaches. So a speculative approach is similar to networking, but it's the group of people that we would class maybe more of your cooler contacts. So the aim of the speculative approach is to identify opportunities that aren't being advertised because it's going to save the company time and money. So by creating a speculative email, you're targeting unadvertised vacancies to find a role. So this approach isn't guaranteed, but again, it increases your visibility and it makes more people aware of you and what your background is. So first of all, we want to think about, what companies you're going to target. So be aware of growing industries. Where are those opportunities right now? If you're looking online and you're seeing more opportunities in alternative industries, make a note of who those are. Now, I mentioned earlier, recruitment agencies generally can only put you forward for jobs if you've had that sector and industry experience. But the whole purpose of the speculative approach is you demonstrating your transferable skills and sending your CV or connecting with somebody on LinkedIn which bypasses a recruitment agency, so it doesn't cost them anything to have a conversation with you. So it's really important that you think about this in your approach. In a challenging job market, as I said, it's essential that you consider the company's pressure points. Where do they need that additional support? Consider this solutions-focused approach. What challenges are they facing at the moment, and what solutions can you offer? Now, some job seekers that I've worked with over the last few years do a mail shot to everybody that they know, and it's not targeted, and you're not necessarily going to get the response that you're looking for. So rather than sending your CV to somebody in HR, look at the company and type in the company name plus the job title of the person that you've been reporting into. So, for example, if you were targeting Dyson, you could type in Dyson on LinkedIn plus manufacturing manager. And then that way you could find the manufacturing manager on Dyson. So you've got a name, so you've got a key contact that you can actually send a targeted approach for. You might need to have a look on the company's website to get the generic email address to understand what their email address could be, or phone reception, and just second guess it and say, I just want to check, is Michael Smith still the manufacturing director there? Is his email address m.smith@dyson.co.uk. So be creative and really think about sending a speculative approach. Now, I've put a speculative email here. So again, if you're requesting the slides, you'll see a copy of this speculative email. So this is an example that you can use. You could use it in a connection request on LinkedIn, or you could use it in an email. I'd always encourage you to use it in the format of an email, and then that way you can attach a copy of your CV because you'll be restricted when you use LinkedIn. Okay, so just a few moments to talk you through this. The first part of the speculative email is why you're interested in that company. Are they growing? Have they recently received investment? You know, have you seen on other job boards that they're recruiting for different areas of the business? So you're reaching out to them because they're going through a period of growth and they're recruiting in this area of the business, and they might be looking for additional support in this function of their business. So be creative. Middle section is what skills and contributions can you make that's going to be relevant for them? So think about what it is that you can use that's going to be relevant for them, and then conclude that letter by suggesting a proactive action. Now, that could be you enclose a copy of your CV and you'll contact them in a couple of days to discuss the possibility of arranging a meeting. If you watched the first webinar that I delivered a couple of weeks ago, I showed you a functional CV. If you're looking at alternative industries and sectors right now, I'd encourage you to use a functional CV with a speculative approach, because what that will allow you to do is to draw out your transferable skills as opposed to just focusing the reader's attention on your job title and date range. So if you are looking at alternative industries, use your cover letter to this company to say why you're interested in changing career, but also where you see those transferable skills. And don't just send your traditional CV. If you're looking at alternative industries and sectors, have a look at the functional CV format that I mentioned in that first webinar, which is really useful for a speculative approach. So most importantly, with the hidden job market, 70% of jobs aren't advertised, and they're being filled, should I say, through networking and this, what we call this proactive speculative approach, because again, remember, you're saving the company time and money because you're going directly, you're bypassing those recruitment consultants, and also you're saving them the cost of actually having to advertise on these job boards as well. So just to summarise what I've spoken to you about over the course of the last 40 minutes, we started off by looking at online job searching. So we talked about planning your online job search, using the different function sector-specific job boards, but also using Boolean keyword searches when you are actually using these advanced searches on these job boards as well. If you're working with recruitment agencies, you need to find the right recruiters for you based on sector and also location. I'd always recommend that with recruiters that you register with more than a couple, just so you can keep the market pretty much covered. You want to make sure that your CV clearly highlights your experience so they can see how you're a good fit for the role that you're applying for. But also when a recruiter is looking at your CV, send it over to them in a Word document so they can then customize it with their contact details on at the top. We then finished off the webinar by talking about the hidden job market. 70% of jobs, they're not advertised. So you want to make sure that you're considering speculative approaches and networking. So create that elevator pitch. Make sure that you also think about the people in your network. So start segmenting them and thinking about your hot, warm and cold contacts. And also make sure if you are doing the speculative approach to any of those cooler contacts or the cold companies who don't know you, they need to be targeted, and you need to think about what can you offer their organisation which would provide a solution. So thank you for listening today. I'll just take you through to the question section of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Emma Louise. And that was an absolutely fascinating session with lots of great detail and some really good practical tips. And I'd encourage you, if you do want a copy of the slides, and I think there's a pop-up message that's gone on to the chat, do email us at eventinquiries@imeche.org. So we do have some questions that have come through, and we'll hopefully get through as many as we can in the next few minutes. But I'll kick off by asking one of them that's come through. So this questioner says, applying for a job which you already have relevant experience for in your current industry is fairly straightforward as long as you use the correct terminology. How do you compete in different industry sectors, or if you don't have the direct experience required? Surely prospective employers will select candidates with a proven track record versus the wildcard candidates. So over to you, Emma Louise.
Do you know what, that's a really good question, and I'm really pleased that you did ask this question, because I'm sure quite a lot of people in today's webinar are exploring alternative sectors and industries, not necessarily through choice as well. So you're totally right. If you're applying for jobs where you've got relevant experience and the industry experience, use recruitment agencies, send your CV, tailor your CV, and there's a high chance that you'll be shortlisted for an interview. If you're looking at alternative industries and sectors now, this is where you have to be a little bit more creative. So it's really important that you, first of all, think about maybe a functional CV. So I mentioned this in the previous webinar. So a functional CV showcases your transferable skills, and it allows you to talk about your areas of expertise as opposed to job title, industry and date range. So first of all, I would say if you're looking at alternative industries, you need to have a functional CV. Secondly, we need to think about bypassing the recruitment agency. So can you second guess the company? If it says our company is a leading manufacturer and it says the location, Google what manufacturing companies are in that location, check their own job boards, check their career page, check their social media platforms. If you can get directly and not come through a recruitment agency, you can personalise your application and you can bypass that recruitment agency fee. Also, you want to think about, if you're looking at alternative industries and sectors, do you know anybody who's got that industry and sector experience? Can they introduce you? Do they know somebody in that company that they can actually make a referral or make a recommendation on your behalf to get your CV circulated in that industry? So it's a very challenging job market right now, and you're totally right. You know, if they are looking at people who have got like-for-like industry experience, and that's something that they see as an advantage, it's trying to avoid going through somebody who's going to introduce you with a fee. So speculative approaches, targeting the company directly, but also utilising your network as well.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So our next questioner says, how do I tailor my CV if I have too many job changes? Do I need to add all my jobs? If, for example, a past experience relevant to a new role was gained 10 years ago, how do I include it? Over to you, Emma Louise.
Okay, so similar to what I just mentioned about the functional CV, if you want to draw the reader's attention to your earlier career history, and we could be talking about a role maybe over 15, 20 years old, your CV in a traditional CV format will focus the reader's attention on certainly the last 10 years. So if you're wanting to talk about your earlier career history, you need to move into a functional format of CV, because this doesn't restrict you by time frame. What you would do, as I said, you have to put the area of expertise and your examples from any aspect of your career. It's not in date order, and that will allow you to move your experience to the first page. If you're just using your current CV, and maybe your CV is longer than 3 pages, your earlier career history in a traditional format of CV would focus on the last 10 to 15 years, and then at the end of the CV you would say earlier career history includes, and you would just summarise where that career history was. So I would suggest, if you want to talk about things that you've done in your earlier career, to use a functional CV. If you've had a lot of jobs as well, maybe if you've done quite a lot of contracting, the functional CV also allows you to group things together rather than listing every single job that you've held.
That's great. So our next question actually has an acronym in it, which I'm not familiar with, which is NED. Can you help me with that, Emma Louise?
Yeah, sure. What's the NED stands for non-executive director. So what's the question?
Okay, brilliant. So I'll read the question out. So with reference to non-executive director roles, there seem to be a number of agencies that ask for payment to access the roles. Do you think it is necessary to go through these for NED roles, or can you do it yourself? Thanks, Emma Louise.
Yeah, for non-exec director roles, there are memberships that you can subscribe to. You tend to find when you're looking at quite senior level roles, there are some recruiters who want you to subscribe to their memberships, and as part of that membership, you get access to X amount of networking events. So within those networking events, they'll introduce you to employers, to other people that potentially you wouldn't be able to network with without that introduction. I say this to all of my clients, regardless of industry and sector, nobody can guarantee you a job. So if you're paying for a membership, there's not a guarantee at the end that there's going to be a job there for you. There are lots of headhunters and recruiters out there that recruit for non-exec director roles that you don't have to pay for. Normally, if you're paying for a membership, which is like an annual subscription, it's because there's lots of other benefits there as well. So it's more about, do you want to go to more events? Do you want to be introduced to more people? I would argue that this is something you could proactively do yourself by going onto LinkedIn, joining more groups, and increasing your network independently without that being a cost to yourself. So the only time that I'd encourage you to explore these memberships that are linked to the non-exec market, do you know anybody who has used this service before and they've got results? What did they benefit from? And if somebody recommends it to you, I would then speak to that independent organisation and say to them, what are the benefits? How many events will I have access to? What's the success rate? So I'm always a little bit sceptical about anything that you pay for, but that's generally what's built into that cost.
Lovely, thank you for that. So our next questioner says, how can I ask to volunteer in the company to get experience, for example, as a project manager?
So is this I'm not too sure if you're in work or out of work. So I'm going to make an assumption that you're out of work. So if you're thinking about volunteering or maybe taking an internship, or even just doing what we would call some work shadowing, if you're out of work and you're happy to provide your services free of charge, in return to gaining more sector and industry experience, I'm guessing that that's why you would be doing that, then you can actually include that in your covering email. I would suggest that you target people in your network, first of all, who know you and know how credible you are. So do you know anybody who works in that industry or sector already? And can you have a conversation with them about volunteering opportunities there? It could be that there are, let's say, for example, more people setting up smaller organisations. We've seen in the oil and gas industry more people who have worked for the big companies, the big corporates, actually setting up their own companies. So you might want to target some of the smaller to medium firms who might benefit from actually getting an additional pair of hands, and then in turn you'll gain more access to that industry experience as well.
Great. Another interesting question here. how do I skip agencies? So the questioner said, I've never got a job using an agency. I always applied myself directly to the company. But recently, many jobs are advertised by agencies, and I feel that some of the jobs advertised by them do not exist. Over to you, Emma Louise.
Sadly, Jill, I have to agree with this delegate because there are recruiters out there that are posting what we would call kind of fake ads, a bit of clickbait there, because the job market is quiet due to the pandemic. There are some industries that have been heavily affected, so recruiters are finding it really tough. So they want to kind of increase their candidate pool. So as and when these opportunities arise, they've got a strong candidate bank that they can start sending CVs out to these companies to say that these are candidates that they're currently working with. The only way to bypass the agencies are when you're on job boards and you've got the option on advanced search to untick staffing agencies. So if an advert is advertised by a company directly, they should appear in your advanced search. Recruiters are quite clever though, Jill, because they would refer to themselves as an employer rather than a staffing agency, so you still might get the odd one through. Second guess them again. If it says the recruiter is recruiting on behalf of a leading manufacturer in this area, think about who those companies are. You could do some calling in. You know, are you currently recruiting for this role? Look at the company's social media platforms and look at the company's career page directly as well. So recruiters purposely don't put the company's details on because you would go directly to them, and that's the whole purpose of them using that recruiter. So what I would really suggest that you do is try and differentiate who these companies are and then start to approach them directly. It's a difficult task, but certainly just doing a little bit more research, who could these companies be? Sometimes if you copy and paste the job description into Google, it will then see where that job's being advertised elsewhere, and it might also be advertised on the company's own website as well.
That's fascinating insight, thank you. And I think we've got time for one final question. So this questioner says, should I load my CV with keywords and hide them in the Word document, so a tiny font size or text colour in white to stick out more in search algorithms? Over to you.
Okay, a really good question there. If you asked me this question 5 years ago, I would encourage you to put a list of keywords at the bottom of your CV and change the font to white, because that way you would get the keywords on the CV, and any CV that was uploaded to a job board, a recruiter searches for keywords and your CV would guarantee to make it to the top of their search results, or if you're applying for a job, it would guarantee make it through to that end user. Sadly, because more recruiters and hiring managers are using applicant tracking systems, so what we call artificial intelligence, they're becoming even more sophisticated, and they can reject CVs that have got a list of keywords that are in white text. So 5 years ago, I'd have said, yeah, definitely do that. But because they've really developed over these last few years, the applicant tracking systems that are being used, some applicant tracking systems will immediately pick out that you've done that and reject the CV. So what you could do, just to try and get those keywords on there, is underneath your profile, you could have a subheading that says key skills or areas of expertise, and then just maybe choose 10 words going across the paper or the screen, should I say, bullet pointed, so you could have things like project management, manufacturing, continuous improvement, engineering. So you could put the keywords that are associated to your background and just put those underneath the profile. Look to include them in the profile and also in the body of the CV. But I would probably say at this stage, just be careful, because applicant tracking systems, they've wised up to it, sadly, and they can reject your CV because of the how sophisticated they are these days.
Well, thank you very much, Emma Louise. And we didn't get through absolutely everybody's questions, but I think we've got a really good flavour of the sort of questions that have come up today. So I'm going to hand back over now to Colin Brown.
Thank you very much, Jill, and thank you very much, Emma Louise. I was going to finish off by trying to summarise what Emma Louise has said, and I think those of you who've listened all the way through this have seen what a tremendous amount of fine detail there is in there, and so I'm going to actually summarise by adding on two of my own comments, which I hope Emma Louise will agree with. The first one is COVID-19. We didn't mention it today, but it is going to be around for some considerable time. And I do think that the geography issue that may have put people off in the past has actually been blown out of the water completely. That the fact now, and this webinar to some extent is an example of it, if we'd have been holding this in Birdcage Walk, we may have had 20 or 30 people come along. We've had nearly 300 people tune in to this webinar while it's been on. So you can access very wide audiences via the internet, and you can certainly in engineering do a tremendous amount of consultancy and support work in engineering distantly. So I would encourage people not to get too hung up with I need a job in a particular locale, that actually it's COVID-19 has a slight benefit in that way. My other comment is the idea about copying what you see works, because media training is one of the things I would encourage you to look at. And many of you say, well, I've never done any media training, but I'd encourage any of you to watch the television in the news programs, the serious news programs, and decide whether or not, when you're watching, for example, Donald Trump discussing something with Joe Biden, whether you're impressed by people who don't listen and interrupt. And indeed, in general interviews, what is it that impresses you about a particular interviewee? So I'd encourage you to listen to a half-hour news program and say, well, gosh, that interviewee seemed to be knowledgeable. They seemed to be listening to the questions. They weren't evasive. And they were somebody that came across as an impressive person. And that's exactly what you are trying to do, whether you're doing it in the elevator pitch or whether you're doing it in the written CV. So do watch what other people do, and if it works for you, it'll probably work for the person that's interviewing you. So thank you so much for taking your time today, and I hope that you will take part in future webinars of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers supported by Renovo. Thank you very much.